And just so you know, we'll give it another minute, possibly two, just to allow people time to come into the meeting. And it's now 1:02. We'll wait till 1:03. All right. What do you say? Should we get started?
Let's do
Let's
it.
do it. Sounds good. Well, first of all, I'd like to welcome everybody to the Countywide Public Message Initiative workshop on public speaking. This is geared toward um, a younger group of people that may not have as much experience with public speaking as some of you that are probably online right now. We're hoping that you'll take this information back to them so that they'll be able to up their game, so to speak. And we just want to let you know that this training is being recorded and will be saved to the CCR website at ccrconsulting.org. So again, welcome to all of you. I'm glad that you're here. And before we get started, I just want to let you know that we're going to be talking about a lot of different topics. So it's going to be an overview. There's no particular secret sauce for public messaging, but there are some guidelines that you can follow to make your presentation more effective, to understand how to better prepare yourself, and then to also to continue the messaging in a way that has consistency and effectiveness as we go forward. Just know that public messaging or speaking in a public forum in any source, whether it's in person, whether it's casually in a crowd, or whether it's on social media or in a technological arena like the one that we're on today, it all has to come from the basic same place, and that is good information based in clear data with proper framing that allows you to send a persuasive message. And we're going to talk a little bit about persuasion, because really that's what public messaging is. Some people would have called it public relations in the past, or public information, any number of different terminology. But really what we're trying to do is to create a persuasive message so that people can have more information about an issue or a topic that we think is important to them and the community, or that we know is important to them and the community. So persuasion is really a key word here. And persuasion, we think of sometimes as something that happens instantaneously. But the reality is that in most situations involving persuasion, it's a process. It's something that goes over the course of time before people get the message. And we can think directly back to that time long ago when methamphetamine was prevalent here in San Diego County. And in fact, San Diego County had received the moniker of the meth capital of the United States. But as people with the county, with initiatives such as yours in the regions, work together to put out messaging, we soon got the word out that this was a dangerous situation that was existing within our community, and that there were things that we could do about it. There were impacts that were taking place out in the community. There were court costs attached to it. There were lives that were being ruined, and we would give them messages over the course of time that persuaded people that this was an issue that needed attention. Recently, we did the same thing with fentanyl, and that message seems to be coming through loud and clear because I believe through the work that you do, the public messaging that you do, it becomes very clear that we are a credible source altogether, and that through that credible public messaging, we're able to impart information that makes a difference to the community. And we all know that, especially those of you who work directly with the youth, we all know that the messaging that's most important is that messaging that is given to those young people who can then disseminate it amongst themselves, that it has credibility and that it has meaning for those young people who are going to be faced with decisions in situations where they're not going to have the opportunity to have someone with more experience guiding them through that decision. I always told my children when they were young that the most important decisions they'll ever make are the ones that they'll make when we're not around. So I wanted to make sure that the messaging that I was giving to them was something that would resonate with them and that they can then pass along to their peers. So with that as a kind of a platform, I'll also let you know that for those of you who don't know me, I may look like kind of a frumpy old guy, but I actually used to be on television as a broadcast reporter. I spent most of my time up in Los Angeles, spent several years here in San Diego. So that was my background is as a broadcast journalist. I also spent time with the Chula Vista Police Department as their civilian public information officer. Worked for several years, 7 years to be exact, working through several new initiatives for the police department, including establishing their online presence and basically creating their public information office. And then also after that, I worked in the education field. I taught at San Diego State University and then later at Southwestern College in the fields of communication as well as journalism. So I have a lot of background in this area. I know a lot of you do as well. So I'm not trying to compare bona fides because I know some of you out there, many of you, if not all, are very accomplished in this arena as well. So just for those of you who don't know, that's my background. If we could go to the next slide, please, Sarah. And I want to let you know that we're going to try to address questions at the end of this. But if you do have a burning question, please submit it in the chat. And I'm sure Sarah or Joe will let me know that there's a question waiting. Sometimes I get so wrapped up in what I'm presenting that I don't think to look down into the icons to see if somebody has their hand up. So just want to let you know that going ahead. So in this workshop, participants will gain some skills to increase confidence with public speaking. And let me tell you, confidence is a great equalizer when it comes to public speaking. And so we're going to cover a little bit of that psychological fear of speaking, or the notion that, will people want to hear what I have to say, and the whole gamut of understanding what makes you click as a public speaker. So we'll go over some of those things. We'll learn to effectively organize and present a position on issues. That, of course, means that you have to have understanding of where you're going to get your data and how you're going to pare it down to a framing that makes it more relative to people that you're speaking to. We will develop fundamental understanding of messaging to various publics. And we got a question the other day about, well, what's a public? Well, publics in the vernacular of public relations are those audiences that you speak to. So in the course of one's day, you speak to a lot of different publics. When you are at home and you wake up in the morning and your family's around the breakfast table or busily getting ready for school or work or wherever they're going off to, that's a public. Those are people that you're communicating with in a given setting. When you get on the road and you turn your blinker on your car, or you brake and the brake lights come on, those are publics that you're communicating with. Now, obviously, it's not a formal presentation, but those are publics that you're communicating with. You're communicating with other drivers. When you get to work, your public is your coworkers or your boss. Those are audiences that you're speaking to. So when we speak of public, we're talking about the audiences that you're speaking to. And those audiences exist whether you are speaking to someone live, in person, face to face, or you're speaking to someone through a camera lens, or you're speaking to someone through a computer screen like I am right now, or if you're laying down a message on social media that will be dispersed on a platform of your choice. Those are all public's viewers, listeners, readers, subscribers that you're messaging to. And you have to understand who they are in order to give the most effective message. You don't speak the same way at home to your loved ones, hopefully it's in a nice way, that you do necessarily to someone at work, or that you might speak to a city council meeting or to a reporter. You use different different ways of messaging to those different publics. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, and then we're going to understand the do's and don'ts, or the do nots, of public speaking. So there are certain things that you certainly don't want to do because it takes away from your credibility. So we'll talk about that. Sarah, if you could advance the slide, appreciate it. All right. So what is public messaging? You know, you're gonna get a lot of different definitions. Every journalism course that you could ever take will have a different definition of what public speaking is. I'm just going to take it down to one sentence. It said public messaging refers to the strategic communication of information to the public. Now, if we were going to put a kind of a capper on that, I would also add, in order to persuade to a particular policy or issue or topic. Your audience, your public, an audience is a specific group of people or stakeholders who are most likely interested in a brand or organization's products or services. Now, we don't directly deal in the selling of products necessarily, but we certainly do deal in the dissemination of information and a way of thinking about particular issues. So that would be our product, and our audience would be whoever that we're messaging to. Also want to kind of give you a definition of what traditional media is in public messaging, as well as modern media. So traditional media, in a nutshell, refers to all forms of communication that existed before the internet. So you had radio, television, newspapers, magazines, billboards, the written word, and of course, speaking in front of people. You know, some of us remember the Toastmasters Club, where you learn to speak in front of people. Traditional media is a type of mass media communication that typically communicates from a single point to many. So if you're speaking on television as a news presenter, you're one person speaking to your large audience, right? So that audience doesn't speak back to you. They just ingest what it is that you're giving to them. And that was kind of the shortfall of traditional media, if there was a shortfall or is a shortfall, is that, and people do say that sometimes that is a shortfall because you're only getting one side of the presentation and there's not a two-way dialogue going on. But that's how it was done prior to the internet. Modern media, new media, is a term that refers to digital communication that uses the internet, computers, smartphones, etc., to share information and entertainment. It includes a wide range of content and technologies. And the difference is that you can interact with the people who are presenting information. And that includes the news, because most traditional media has now segued into the modern media world. So understanding that there is a difference and there's a different way to speak to each of these types of media in order to get your message across is very important to recognize. So understanding that modern media is a two-way platform and knowing how to engage that platform in a way that's most beneficial to you is really important in this day and age. In the past, with traditional media, we would message by writing op-eds, or we would send a letter to the editor, or we would ask for a retraction or a correction, and it might take some time before all of that is settled upon. Now, through modern media, technological digital media, you can refute something immediately, whether it's right or wrong, or whether you have a position that is correct or not, you can refute it immediately. And so it takes a lot of understanding and a lot of work, I would say, to really get the true message. You know, is what I'm hearing the correct thing? And we hear a lot of this now as it relates to information that comes out in mass. We saw this quite a bit during COVID. You had a lot of differing points of view. We had a lot of misunderstanding about how the illness worked and what vaccinations did, and you could go on right on down the line. But all of that public messaging created a lot of conflict, a lot of confusion, and in some cases, even tragedy. So it's very important to understand how to present your message, even if you're a young person giving out information to your peers. You have to understand that there's an impact, and that impact that we get, we want it to be hopefully in the way that it persuades them to a position that's beneficial to them for our particular topic. Next slide. And we have an hour for this, and I'm gonna kind of rush through this so that we have some time at the end for a video. And you're going to hear me say some things, and you're going to have some opinions about what it is I'm presenting. But remember, I'm just trying to give you an overview. So there are many topics that we'll talk about that we could discuss and have an hour-long workshop just on that particular topic. So I'm not going to try to persuade you on every point, but I am going to try to give you an overview. So, and do it in the time that we have, so that we have time at the end to see what I think is a pretty impressive video of a young person presenting information. Effective public messaging produces positive results. So it brings focused attention to issues and shapes the conversation. It builds credibility and support. And most importantly for us, it changes behavioral norms, policies, and community conditions. So we want to bring that focused attention to the issues that we're working on, whether it be a sticker shock or a red ribbon or fentanyl awareness. We want to bring awareness to the community and build credibility and support for these issues so that we can change the behavioral norms and the policies and the community conditions that lead to these situations where we have these issues to begin with. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm going to give you some tips about how to start building that message, right? And obviously, I don't have every one of you will have a different issue or point of view or subject matter that you're working on in your area. So I'm not going to try to say, well, North County should do this when it comes to sticker shock, or South County should do this when it comes to community building. I'm just going to give you the overview. So once you start developing your message, and we'll talk about developing a message in a second, the three things you want to keep in mind is that you want to make your message quotable, especially in today's age of modern media, where especially social media, where the attention span of the average viewer, I'll just use the word viewer or user of social media, is quite short. You have to grab their attention quickly, because otherwise they're going to slide right, slide left, click to the next thing, move on to the next interesting thing that they have access to via their social media. So you want it to be quotable. You want it to be pointed. You want it to be direct. We're doing a sticker shock because teenagers are able to access liquor at stores in our neighborhood. You want to be pointed. You want to be factual. Last year, 4 different operations within our county led to 20 arrests. I'm just making this up. 20 arrests and the closing down of 3 liquor stores because they were selling to teenagers. All right. So you want to make it factual. You want to have a basis in fact. You want to be quotable, and you want to stay on message. So have your message ready. Next slide. So organize your thoughts. This is where we're going to think about what it is that that allows you to bring a solution forward. Now, obviously, if you have a solution, that means you had a problem. So we're going to use this message triangle, which is not my idea. It's been around since the 60s. We're going to talk about what the problem is, And then we're going to brainstorm solutions using data to bring our point about. So the problem is, why are we here? What has led to this situation? The solution, what can solve the problem? And then the data says, look, let us show you how this is a problem. We talked about fentanyl just a few moments ago. Well, it's a problem because people are selling these things as legitimate pharmaceuticals, but they're not, and people are dying. This is a problem because the number of overdoses in the county has never been higher as a result of these drugs hitting our streets. It's a problem because people don't have the understanding that it's being mixed in with other substances. So the problems can go on and on. It's the problem because it's overloading our emergency rooms in the county. It's a problem because it's difficult to detect coming across the border or from other regions, wherever it's coming from, because these large quantities can be contained in small containers. So we bring these problems to the forefront through data, which we all have access to through, as an example, our SUOPT report card. A lot of data and information in there related to different segments of the population. So let your leaders know, hey, where can I find this data? Let the people in your offices or the programs that you're working with, let them know, where's this data? How can I find data that will support understanding that there's a problem and what may be the solutions, and frame it in a way that people can understand. So this notion of framing is one that I'm sure you've all heard about before, but it essentially is a way to explain a problem in such a way that people can relate to it. It's one thing to say, overdose deaths in people under the age of 25 is the second leading cause of deaths for that group in the United States, behind traffic accidents, excuse me. It's one thing to say that. That's just a statistic, and it's shocking, but it's just a statistic. But when you say, let me frame it this way. Last year, here in San Diego County, over 40 people under the age of 25 died as a result of a traffic accident in which fentanyl was found in their bloodstreams. There was even somebody in my neighborhood who died. I don't want to see this happen in our neighborhoods, and I want you to help me find a solution to this problem. So in that framing of the issue, you brought it home. You brought it to a place where people could relate to it. You might even say something like, do you know someone who has had this problem or is going through this problem? Bring people in through the framing so that they understand that this just isn't some problem that exists somewhere else, that it's an issue that has a direct impact within your community. And so that's where framing becomes a very important aspect to the whole problem solution data thing. It's bringing it home. And with young people, especially through social media, we all know someone who is going through difficulties related to substance misuse, or the possibility that they may be thinking of trying this as a possible solution or a recreational remedy to blow off steam, to take the pressure off. We all know people like this. We all know of situations that have occurred because of exposure to these substances, or whatever the issue may be. So framing becomes very important in how you present the problem, the solution, and relate the data to the persuasion that you're trying to create. Next slide, please. So make sure that in your messaging, we're going to talk about a quick messaging formula. Make sure that in your messaging that you're very clear about what your introduction is. Hi, I'm Bernard Gonzalez. Today I'm going to talk to you about public messaging, and most especially public messaging as it relates to the youth peer-to-peer messaging. And then we're going to make our points concise. One, you want to make sure that the information that you impart is based in data that is current and that it's credible. Second, you want to make sure that your appearance is credible as well. You don't want to show up to a city council meeting in a bodysuit and just right out of the surf. You want to make sure that you're wearing something that's appropriate, that will give you credibility in front of an audience. And then point three, make sure that you conclude your, you want to make sure that you conclude your messaging by basically telling them what you're going to tell them what you told them, and then tell them again. So you want to conclude by making sure that all your points are covered. So have a framework, using that word framing again, have a framework for your message. Make sure that you have a clear introduction. Make sure that you have 3 concise points minimum, even if they all relate back to the same piece of information. And then have a conclusion that summarizes what it is that you just told them. It's a very easy messaging formula. We use it all the time in the broadcast journalism industry. We can impart a message very rapidly when we have this as a formula and as an outline. You can take an entire scenario and break it down in 30 seconds if you use this type of messaging formula. We just found out that there are fires in XYZ community. Firefighters say that at this point, no homes have been evacuated, but the fire is moving rapidly. So far, it's burned 5 acres. We have crews moving to that area right now so that we can get you the latest information. Coming up at 5 o'clock, we're going to tell you exactly what we learned. Please stand by. We'll give you more information at that time. So that's your introduction, your 3 points, and your conclusion. So just have that little messaging formula in mind when you go forward to deliver the messages that you're trying to impart, and it'll help you stay focused. Next slide, please. Let me catch my breath, get a little bit of water. All right, characteristics of a good spokesperson. You know, as there are many styles of good spokespersons. They can be male, they can be female, they can be short, they can be tall, they can be any physical, dimension you might want to think about. But all of them share different things. They may have, different voices. Some people may have very grating voices. Some people may have very smooth voices. Some people may have very high-pitched voices. Some people may have low-pitched voices. Some people may take a long time to get to their subject matter. But as you start to put together the pieces, you realize that even though it may not necessarily match your line of thinking, when you heard the end result, it made perfect sense. So there's all kinds of different speakers that can be great speakers. But I will tell you that there are some characteristics, and these are not all of them. There are probably many more, but these are some of the ones that stand out to me. First of all, you're presentable, you're self-aware. And by that, I don't mean that you need to wear a 3-piece suit. If you're doing a beach cleanup and you're out there in a t-shirt and shorts and you're presenting information to a reporter, say, or to a group of people who you're addressing who have come out to help you, it's okay to be in that t-shirt and shorts because of the surroundings that you're in, but you are presentable. If you go to the city council to present a piece of information related to whatever your initiative is, you don't want to be dressed in those shorts and t-shirts and flip-flops. You want to be in a presentable suit, or even a sports shirt and long pants. You want to be in something that's going to say, look, I know where I am. So be self-aware when you go into these situations, if at all possible. Obviously, be knowledgeable. Understand your topic, understand what your mission is, understand who it is that you're speaking to, who your audience or public is, and understand how to be concise. Be knowledgeable about being concise. That little format that I gave you in the previous slide will help you to stay on message quite a bit, and to also be to be concise. People like to hear good information, but they don't like to hear it over and over and over because it loses its impact, I think. You want to be credible. And so what is credibility? Well, credibility is understanding your topic. Credibility is being able to point to the work that you do in this arena. Credibility is having some cachet amongst your peers so that when you say something, they don't have to wonder whether you're believable or not. So being credible also has a lot to do with being articulate. And that goes back to being knowledgeable about your topic. Be articulate in such a way that you're able to stay on message, to elaborate, and even be extemporaneous about the issue when it comes time to answering questions. So just be articulate, know your subject matter. Of course, I knew I was going to mess up the word extemporaneous when I wanted to be articulate. So you can you can forgive me on that one, I hope. Be genuine, be truthful. There are a lot of times when you'll be presenting information and someone will ask you a question that you honestly do not have the answer to. And so you want to be genuine in that moment and say, I don't have the answer to that question. And if I can, I'll try to find that answer for you. Let me have your contact information and I'll get back to you. Or it may be a situation where somebody's taken you off the path of the information that you want to imbibe. And so you may say, that's not in my arena, or that's not information that would be relevant to what we're talking about today. So I don't feel comfortable in addressing this because it's simply not something that I know about. It's okay to be genuine and it's okay to be truthful as you go forward. But, it's also okay to be passionate. We see a lot of very persuasive and meaningful speakers who are extremely passionate about the information that they're imparting, but they're passionate while giving good, knowledgeable information. They're credible because they've been there. They're articulate because they understand the topic at hand. Very passionate people. We see this a lot with people who present, as an example, at the last Overdose Awareness Day. We had everyone from the San Diego County District Attorney to a mother who lost a child, and all of them were extremely passionate about the positions that they took when it came to making people aware of overdose and the impacts to the community, to families, to the offices of government, and to all of the various institutions that deal with this notion of overdose. So people were very passionate that day. And I know that young people can be very passionate as well. But passion has to be somewhat contained. It has to. We understand that there's emotion attached to being passionate, but when you're so passionate that you lose the message behind the emotion, then it can actually be counterproductive. I know that we have people that sometimes reach out to us being the SUOPT or through Joe's cannabis initiative, and they want to latch on to us to give them something that we may not be able to provide because they have a situation occurring where they have a loved one who's in trouble or they've lost a loved one, and we give them all the information that we can, but they become so lost in the emotion that it actually becomes counterproductive. So when we're giving our messages, our concise, credible, knowledgeable, articulate, genuine messages, we want to do it with passion. We want to be persuasive. We want to be committed, but we also want to understand where the limits are with our passion so that we don't become counterproductive. Next slide, please. All right, another, the previous communication triangle came from Albert Melrabian from UCLA. He was a professor of psychology, again, back in the 60s. He did a lot of work on, what goes into communication, effective communication. This was a really interesting conclusion that he came to. I don't know that I buy all of it, but I thought that it was very interesting because as we listen to people, as we watch people, as we communicate with people, and as we decide whether or not they're persuading us or not, a lot of what goes into it is not the spoken word. So we need to be aware that body language is very important when we're uh, giving our messages out. And body language can be very different depending on where you are. So, as an example, if you're communicating one on one with somebody here in the Western United States or in the United States, period, there's a very delineated line that we can move into and out of, and it's called personal space. If we're communicating someone and we invade their personal space with our bodies, it becomes very hard for them to accept our communication. If we're talking to a camera, like I'm talking to a camera, I'm actually talking to a computer screen because I don't actually see the camera, but we have to understand where our how our body is affecting our message. If we're speaking to a television camera, one of the hardest things to do when speaking to a television camera is looking into that small round lens and having a connection with all of the eyes that are on the other side of it. But we have to be aware that our body language has an impact on those particular scenarios. Same thing in front of a city council. If you're at the city council and your body is leaning back and you're sideways and you're not speaking directly into the microphone, it can take away from the persuasion that you're trying to gain or the credibility that you're trying to impart of your message. So being aware of body language, how much your hands move, where you place them, the look on your face, where you're looking at the time that you're speaking. How many of you have been speaking to someone and while their body may be facing you, their eyes are diverted somewhere else? And you know that they don't hear you completely or that their attention is distracted and that your message may not be getting across. So being aware of not only your body language, but their body language can go a long way in making sure that your message is getting across. The other part of it is tone of voice. It's not just the words that we're saying. Sometimes people don't even have to say a word for you to understand where they're coming from. Maybe a laugh, a chuckle, a giggle, or just a groan or a yawn. Any of those things can be an indicator of how your message is coming across. So Rabian said, hey, you know what? Almost 90% or 90% of what we're saying is not even related to the words that we're saying, but how we're saying it, the tone of voice that we're using, how our body language is positioned. And all of this can be related to the different styles of communication platforms that you're going to be using. So when you speak to your students, to your young people about how they're relating to their situation, make sure they understand that body language is very important. Eye contact, the tone of their voice, the tilt of their head, the position of their feet, all of these things go into creating a credible, persuasive message. And while you may not be thinking of that first and foremost, to be aware of it creates a situation where you can be a little bit more powerful and persuasive in your delivery of communication. Next slide, please. Let's see how we're doing on time. 1:39. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay, it's just same thing that we just talked about, nonverbal communication tips. Be aware of your body language. Be aware of that you're wearing appropriate clothing for the situation. Have good eye contact. We're not involved in stare outs, but we do, good eye contact is that where you're looking at people in a respectful way, not challenging them, not mad dogging them, but looking at them in a respectful way. The eyes are the window to the soul, and looking at someone in a way that convinces them that your message is important can go a long way in creating that relationship or that bond that will allow someone to really tune into your message. Eye contact is important. The tone of your voice is important. Understand whether or not you're speaking loud enough to be understood. Understand whether or not you're enunciating in such a way that people don't have difficulty putting your words together. Understand the value of gestures or not gesturing. Again, body language. Movement, same thing. Am I rocking back and forth? You don't want to be rocking back and forth because it's a distraction. Am I moving in and out, in and out? Again, a distraction. Hold your position. Understand, a tilt of a head, a slight movement in a camera goes a long way. We're big people. These screens on a smartphone are this big. So when we make a movement, it becomes exaggerated. Also, expression. Understand what your face is saying as you impart these words, because it becomes a very important part of the language that you're expressing beyond the words. Next slide. I think we're getting toward the end. This was, okay, we're to the video. Perfect. This is perfect timing. This was on YouTube, and of course, just like everything else is on YouTube, but I really wanted to find something that was appropriate to what we're talking about today. This is Helia Mohadam, excuse me. She gave a TEDx youth talk at Lafarge Lake I believe it's in Wisconsin, and it's talking about the domino effect, youth and substance abuse. This young lady is 16 years old. Unfortunately, the camera person was not very effective, but she's very effective. So let's listen to this for just a few minutes, because I think it's a great example of the potential that all of our young people have to give a great presentation, regardless of where they're giving that presentation, either to a big audience or one-on-one to their peers. So if we could start that, I'd appreciate it.
Before I begin my speech, I would like to dedicate it to my beautiful mother, my grandma Parvinjun, and my aunt who has recently passed away, Beatrice Sultani. So let's begin. Marijuana, Molly, lean, vape, Adderall, MDMA, LSD, Xanax, shrooms, teen pregnancy, unprotected sex, provocative pictures, drinking, smoking, suspension, expulsion, the wrong path. As I watch the eyes of the adults in the room widen, and I see our youth turn their heads, I'd like to ask you one question. What is so shocking about this situation? Do we need a news headline to tell us what is going on in our youth? Does another 16-year-old girl need to die of a fentanyl overdose in a Starbucks washroom? Does another teenager need to throw a house party resulting in $10,000 in damage and 3 overdoses? The destruction of our youth is happening before our very eyes, and it would be cowardly to pretend that we're not exposed to it and the effects it has on each and every one of us. In the words of Gandhi, the future depends on what we do in the present, and as of the status quo, we are not doing enough to prevent our youth from spiraling out of control. My name is Heli Magadam. I am 16 years old, and I'm standing here giving you a TED Talk about youth and substance abuse. Yeah, I'm hearing myself, and you're probably questioning the validity of my argument. Maybe because I haven't hit my growth spurt or received my high school diploma. But despite my age, or maybe even because of it, I have the knowledge and understanding to speak about this issue because it hits so close to home. Every day of my life, I am exposed to the impacts of substance abuse, whether it's in my peers, classmates, or acquaintances. And I know the thing that needs to be changed most about this situation is how we advertise it, the situation of great depth and complexity. We need to remove the stigma surrounding youth and substances. We need to not only initiate the conversation, but open it. Because as years go on, the nonchalant attitudes of our youth are catching up with us. As youth, we have so much more to lose than we think. Because to us, it's not just about the grade, the friendship, or the conflict. Our actions at this age are imperative in our futures, who we become and how we progress. So, instead of turning our heads at the sight of mass destruction, we must and we will move forward. Because today it's provocative pictures, and tomorrow it's prostitution. Today it's just a party drug, and tomorrow it's an overdose. Today it's being rude to your teacher, and tomorrow it's being arrested over aggressive conduct. These leaps are viewed as drastic, but they are nothing short of realistic. We drive by downtown Hastings, and we shake our heads at the overuse of drugs and crime. Yet we don't even acknowledge it occurring in our youth, our most important members of our future society. Once we learn to acknowledge these acts of misconduct, we will make schools places of safety, security, and comfort. We will turn to our adults as our role models, guiders, and restrictors. Accepting guidance is important, but providing it is just as crucial, and that guidance needs to be provided in schools, homes, and communities. There are certain moments in our lives that we can pinpoint. They were self-defining, pivotal in our lives. My moment was in grade 10. I was staring at my iPhone screen from the comfort of my own bed after my Tri-City basketball game. I received a Snapchat from my best friend at the time. It was a picture message. I opened it, and it was a picture of her. Her two eyes were red. There was smoke clouding the air, and it was captioned, "This is fun." My heart dropped about 3 stories, and in shock, I left the message open with no response. I couldn't tell you why I was so in awe of the message. Maybe it was because she was my best friend, or maybe it was because it was my first time being exposed to substances and their effects on my peers. So I called her cell phone like any concerned friend would do. 1 ring, 2 ring, 3 ring, no answer. So I called again. 1 ring, 2 ring, 3 ring, no answer. The next morning, she called me. With no recollection of the incident, she could barely remember that she had been sending me messages the night before. So I lectured her for quite a bit, told her I didn't respect the decisions she was making, and she hung up the phone. About a month passed by, and slowly but surely our friendship came to an abrupt ending. Situations like these, as I'm now in grade 11, are nothing short of common. According to the Teen Help and the National
in the
Drug
interest of time, let's
Association
go
of
ahead
Canada,
and stop the
when
video there
surveying students
and go to the next slide.
about what some
All right. I hope you heard within her presentation, which I know is a long presentation, but you could have taken any one of those sections and turned it into a message all by itself. She utilized, she obviously had great credibility because of her ability to be articulate. She obviously understood the importance of having her points laid out in a way that was very logical. She used framing by pointing out various situations that she'd been exposed to, had seen on TV, newspapers. She challenged people to think differently about a situation. She used all of the various types of strategies, if you will, in order to get her message across. And throughout the entire video, this young woman continued to use data. She continued to use personal framing. She continued to use challenging language that was not, it was challenging in a way that was not threatening. It was simply waking people up to a problem that needed to be addressed more rapidly than to just let it sit on a shelf. I just thought that it was extraordinary. And I know that not every young person has the ability to speak for that long a time on that type of subject with that kind of clarity. But I think all of our young people have the ability to promote a message that you're trying to impart through the different works that you do. So the helpful tips that I get out of her presentation was she understood her issue through and through. She obviously prepared and practiced. She knew that everything is on the record. So in other words, by that I mean, even if you're speaking to a friend one-on-one to impart your message, understand that that friend is going to carry that message with them. And that if you don't tell them things that are true, that are not based in data, that are not based in real situations that you can point to and have truthful understanding of, then it's going to create credibility problems. So on the record, we think of as being more related to talking to a reporter or speaking in front of a group like city council. But on the record simply means that everything you say is going to be recorded in somebody, whether it's on their memory or in their camera. And so you want to make sure that what you're saying is correct, that it's credible. Speak smart from the heart. This young lady did a great job of speaking smart from the heart, relating the incident about her friend who had called in the evening and then the next day not recollecting that she had called. This obviously impacted her quite a bit and disturbed her. So it had a huge impact on her understanding of how deep this issue is. Choose a frame that supports your strategy and your role. This young lady obviously had a strategy, and that was to get this messaging that our youth are in more trouble than we think out to the largest audience possible, not only through the audience she addressed in her TED Talk, but also through the audience that she now engages through the YouTube video that is visible to anyone who would have an interest in her message. And she understood her role, that I can speak from personal experience as to the depth of this problem. So she chose that frame of lived experience. And then lastly, lead with your values and always include a solution. Look, we have a problem, but I think if we do this, our data indicates if we can do this, if we can get this message, if we can change this law, if we can, whatever it is that you're working on, include a solution if you can. Next slide. And we're getting toward the end here. All right, how to answer tricky interview questions. Some of you will be in front of a reporter from time to time, and hopefully more often than not, whether it be print, radio, television, or internet, social media. One is really listen to the question. Really understand what the person is asking you. And don't be so quick to answer. Reflect on the best response. So if you're talking about sticker shock and somebody asks you, well, what is sticker shock and what's the value of it? Really listen to the question and reflect on that response. Okay, well, sticker shock is an effort to bring awareness to the issue of underage drinking. And through this effort, we involve young people to be part of the solution. Stick to your message. Well, does anybody really pay attention to sticker shock? Stick to your message. We've seen the results of sticker shock. Look, by the fact that we have young people out here today, young people that might not have ever been out here had we not had a sticker shock program, we may not be out here, but you can see them. We can see that the message is working. We can see that our efforts are working, and we're going to continue. If the person continues, but they're being rude, or if they ask you questions that don't really require you to answer because they're not on point, you can tactfully say, I don't really know. Or you can respectfully to decline questions when necessary. I don't think that really has anything to do with what we're doing here today, so I'm going to respectfully decline to answer that question. So make sure that you're aware that you have the right to either say you don't know or respectfully decline questions that aren't necessarily in the arena that you're speaking to. So those are some tips on answering tricky interview questions. And there are a lot more, but those are just some of the highlights. Next slide, please. Okay, we're winding down. We have 5 minutes left. So we have a training evaluation survey. If you could just take a quick picture of that QR code, I'll give you a couple of seconds to do it. Please complete this brief 5-item survey to help us improve future trainings. Just takes a few moments. You can also, if you want to take a picture of the web, the URL, you can do that as well. Or is it in the chat, Sarah?
It is
I
not,
think,
but I will put it in there.
okay, and we'll also put it in the chat so that you can take this just brief 5-item survey. It really helps us a lot. And then last slide. There we go. I know we don't have a lot of time. I think we have about 4 minutes. Do we have any questions? I don't see any necessarily. But if not, I hope that this has some value for you as you train up your young people to impart messages that have meaning and value to the efforts that you're making in your regions. I know that there is a lot more that we could go over. We could take each one of these slides and spend an hour on each one of them. But I just want to make sure that you know that I'm available to you. We are now the countywide public messaging initiative. So just know that, but you can still email me at cwma@ccrconsulting.org. That's cwma@ccrconsulting.org. So I hope this had some value to you. And if there's anything else we can do, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. And once again, the URL for the survey is in the chat. If you could please either click on the URL, or if you could just use the QR code to take that survey, we'd really appreciate it.
Bernard, we do have a question.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go right ahead. What is the question?
Andrea Moss, if you're doing an on-camera interview, should you look at the reporter asking the questions when you answer, or should you look at the camera? I've heard both.
Yeah, and they're both right. So let me give you an example. In this day and age, with today's modern newsroom, many times the photographer will go out and be the one asking you the question. So they're photojournalists, so they're journalists as well. And in that case, the camera person will typically still be looking through the lens or making sure that their eye is close to the lens. In that situation, you want to look toward the camera person, but it'll feel like you're looking into the lens because they're in the eyepiece. And so they're kind of like right there, and you'll be looking into the lens. If you're speaking to a reporter, if they have the luxury of a reporter, then definitely speak to the reporter as you're answering the question. So those are two really easy situations. Just look at whoever is asking the question. It's going to look like you're looking at the camera when you're talking to the photographer. It's going to look like you're looking off camera when you're speaking to the reporter.
Bernard, I have a quick question.
Sure.
Many of us are afraid because it could be live. Is there a lot of leeway with editing after the fact, or if it's live, it's live? That's it.
Yeah, if it's live, it's live. And that's why I stress the importance of having your subject matter under control and being concise. Most of the time when you're live, the biggest issues that I see are people who, one, don't realize they're live because they're so busy in their head rehearsing their answer that they forget that they're live. They just don't pay attention when the reporter says, okay, we're going to speak to so-and-so now, and here's the question, and what do you think? And be like, oh, are we live? You've seen that before. Oh, are we live? Well, of course you're live, because they just told you they were going to go live, right? So make sure that you don't overthink it. Have your answer in check. If they ask you something that may be a little bit off of the mark, just bring it back to what your point is, and that'll help you quite a bit, so that you don't have to think beyond what it is that you want to say. But yeah, live is live. There's no editing that goes on there, and that's where your body language, being steady, being understanding of where you are, and being calm, articulate, and focused will come in really handy. I know, because I've had enough time where I wasn't calm, articulate, or focused. So it goes a long way. Yeah. Anything else?
I think that's it. Andrea gave you a nice compliment. It was
thank
filled
you.
with a lot of great info. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Okay, well, that's it. That's our hour. Don't forget that this training or workshop will be on the CCR website. It has been recorded. I really appreciate all of you joining me today. I know many of you have just as much, if not more, experience that I do in this arena. So I appreciate all of your attention. And if there are any other points that you'd like me to impart, please let me know, and we'll send it out to the group as a whole. Okay. All right. Have a great day. Take care of each other, and we'll see you soon. Take care.